We've only begun to sue. I'm reminded of that famous Carpenter song, like we've only just begun. We've only just begun to sue. Basically, we've only just begun. Oh, I don't want a copyright strike to sue. Bump, 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 bump. You know the song, right? We've only just begun to sue. So, yeah. We know, of course, of the bombshell commission lawsuit out in Kansas City, and we know of another one that's going to be heard in the springtime. And we also know that the people who just won in Kansas City have also filed another, even bigger lawsuit that would be basically basically everyone more money, more money. It's only just begun. It's only just begun. So you as an agent, if you're an agent in this marketplace, you're going to be like, oh my God, what's got to happen? Listen, if you're an agent in this marketplace, remember there's still going to be a lot of opportunity for you. In fact, for those of you who are nimble and creative thinkers, there might even be more opportunity for you. So, for those of you who are out there and just picking the low hanging fruit, you're more likely than not bleeped. You're in trouble. But if you're smart enough and work hard, I think there's still going to be plenty of opportunity in this industry going forward. So yesterday we talked about the two type of agents that are out there looking at this situation. And there's a bunch of agents out there, and I would actually probably say this is the majority, who are hugely angry at the situation and resentful that a bunch of hayseed lawyers and a jury out in Kansas City in a flyover state would make this national decision for us. There's a bunch of people that are very upset. And then I think there's a small number of agents who have embraced that this is going to happen. So why don't we just get on board with it and figure out the best thing that you can do as an individual or as a brokerage or a broker, whatever, to embrace what is going to that's the market I think you should be in. That's the mindset I think you should be in going forward. Remember now, NAR has already changed the rule that you can offer a 0% commission. Now, up until this point, you could have offered $1, which is basically the same thing, especially with inflation nowadays, isn't it? So what really has changed since early October? Effectively nothing, except for the psychological impact and the fact that now all your buyers and sellers, or at least a lot of them, should have maybe, if they're paying attention, and if they're in the marketplace, they might be paying attention, may have now realized that something's going on and they might be able to save some money. They might just have like a kernel of information about that there something happened. I could save some money. Tell me about it, right? And I think what we should talk about today are the effective two conventional wisdom outcomes that might happen right now as a result of this. Conventional wisdom number one is that, as we spoke about, the system might go to an optional system where, much like the Boston apartment market, where I started off in, where sometimes the landlord pays the fee and sometimes the tenant pays the fee. Usually the tenant pays the fee, but there are situations based upon market dynamics where the landlord pays the fee. And that would be the current system that we're in now. That is now allowable for the seller to offer no commission. And therefore, if the buyer wants their own agent, the buyer can pay their own agent. That comes up against a rather hard financial fact, however, when the buyer is least able to come up with an extra 10 or 15 grand or whatever it is, they're cash strapped to buy the house. So they can't come up with the money, right? So that's why I believe NAR and some other organizations have asked for regulations to be changed to make it easier to roll in the buyer side fee on the side of the ledger, which is on the buyer side of the ledger. See, right now you understand that the Buyer side fee is on the seller's side of the ledger, and therefore it doesn't trip any of the mortgage regulations. See what I'm saying there? So with that change, if that change would ever to come, it would make it easier for the buyer to finance. Not that it's totally undoable now, it's kind of doable, but it would make it a lot easier if those regulations went through for the buyer to finance the buyer side fee into the loan. However, what would be even less expensive for the buyer would be to just simply go directly to the listing agent. However, there's a soft cost to that, of course, because then the buyer would not be represented in the transaction. So that's kind of like what we've been talking about Back to the Future with a situation that we had like back in the 80s, before I was a real estate agent, where there really wasn't, or at least in Massachusetts, there was not buyer side agency. That's the situation here. I want to bring up this podcast that was posted, I believe, yesterday. Let's see if we can bring this up here. It's a little crooked. Here we are. This is Mr. DeWiggins and his podcast co-host, Keith. I don't know his last name. Discussing scenario number one, where fees will vary based upon the market conditions. Here we go.
Completely, utterly strapped for cash.
Due to massive affordability issues in the United States. Continue.
That they are unlikely going to be able to pay their buyer's agent for representation, which is why it used to be this way, where I collected it and remitted it. Now I can't do that legally anymore. So when a purchase offer comes across, you are almost 100% going to see in there a stipulation that you as the seller are to pay the buyer's agent's compensation directly. Or depending upon how your state's set up, it may be that you're to offer a credit to the buyer so the buyer can pay the buyer's agent directly.
The Cliff's Notes is buyer agent commission will be one of the terms in your purchase agreement when you submit your offer.
And that's how we used to do it with apartments. You know, if we knew that apartment was hard to rent, or if we knew that it should have been rented now, but market conditions showed that it hadn't been, and it was still listed as full fee to the tenant, we'd send in an application and say, this application is half fee to the tenant and half fee to the landlord. So we, make them an offer. It didn't matter to us that they were listing it as full fee to the tenant. We said, nope, we're going to split the fee. And the landlord could either accept that offer or not, right? Now, this scenario is much more complex. It's much more of a free market situation, but it makes it harder to understand the market from a consumer's point of view because the market is dynamic and constantly changing. Now, the other conventional wisdom here is that sharing commissions will be barred. And yesterday, finally, we had somebody, and I'm gonna say something good about this gentleman here, Glenn Kelman. He, if anything, from Redfin, is very media savvy, tremendously media savvy, right? And he understands, like I said the other day about Dana Perino, you always kind of want to be in favor of what's coming next, especially if you can't stop it, right? So yesterday he did an interview with Brad Inman from Inman News, and he kind of laid out what the Department of Justice's plan might be should the judge not do it for the Department of Justice. Remember, the Department of Justice intervened in the MLS no-select case here in Massachusetts, MLS PIN no-select case, and they said, here it is, the United States has significant concerns with the planned rule changes upon the proposed settlement, according to the filing, that merely tweaking buyer-broker commission rule, in other words, to make it optional, to allow 0% commissions does little to make the market more competitive. Oh, boy. So following that logic, the Department of Justice is highly going for a ban on commissions, And that's why Redfin CEO, with commissions in peril, cooperation may crumble. And let him explain it for you.
Right. I would just say that to me, it seems possible that there will be a financial settlement that's somewhat significant in favor of the plaintiffs without much structural change. Because after all, the plaintiffs' attorneys are looking for mostly a financial outcome. Whatever the rhetoric might be around wanting structural change, that's really the ambition of the Department of Justice. Whereas
I agree with that. Okay, the lawyers are in it for the money, right? The lawyers are in it for the money, as evidenced by my class action settlement that I got the other day. $3.31. Still haven't cashed a check. I'm sure the lawyers made a lot more than I did. I didn't even know.
I think the plaintiffs, if they win, will mostly just take the money. Having said that, just the tenor of the questions coming out of the DOJ indicate to us that they're going to watch the trial. If they don't see the structural change come from that trial, then I think they would become more aggressive. And a lot of that depends on the election. This all started when Biden beat Trump. Trump is an old real estate guy. And so the DOJ under Trump was one step less aggressive than it has been under Biden. Both administrations had a DOJ pursuing this, but under Biden, it was more aggressive. And so our guess is that cooperation is going to continue to come under pressure. And what we've seen is that in the shadow of the courthouse, brokers are starting to make their bets that cooperation might not work. They're withholding listings from the MLS in places like Cleveland. There's more dual agency in places like California. Everyone is looking ahead to a world where the buyer may have to pay the buyer's agent, and many buyers choose not to do that, just as they do in new construction. So
hold on.
It is a wild time in real estate. Not much has changed most years. I used to go on stage and say,
that is true. It is a wild time in real estate. It makes doing this show every morning so much easier. Thank you, Glenn Gelman from Redfin. So he lays out a very plausible scenario that we've talked about on this website, on this live stream, where the Department of Justice would intervene, just as they did in the Massachusetts case, and they would effectively call for a ban of the seller from paying the buyer side agent. Now, in the Kansas City case, the plaintiffs have asked the judge to institute that ban as part of an injunction. So usually when you win a civil case like this, not only do you get a financial reward, as they did, $5.3 billion, but also usually following that is some type of court ruling that prohibits you from doing that type of activity again. And so it will now be up to the judge in Kansas City to decide the scope of what the defendants can no longer do, if I get that right. And certainly one of the things he will consider is what the judge approved here in Massachusetts, which is voluntary or optional cooperation. Well, in other words, you could write zero, right? So that will be definitely an option. But this judge is not living in a bubble. He obviously knows that the Department of Justice has intervened in that case, and the Department of Justice has said that wouldn't be sufficient because, as we know, through the Northwest MLS and through Bright MLS and from the Consumer Federation of America, that has had no substantive change in the marketplace on the ground for buyers and sellers. So it does seem that there is now some significant movement toward a situation where sellers could be banned from sharing commissions. And if you're not starting to think about that as a way forward in our business, you definitely got to put this on the radar screen right now. How do I market myself to become a seller agent, a listing machine? And is that really any different? We all have known that if you want to be successful in this business, you get listings. You become a listing machine. And if you get, you can write your own ticket. If you get all the listings, you can walk into your broker's office and say, hey, this comp plan at 60% split? Yeah, I don't think that's going to be the split anymore. You can dictate your terms because you're the listing. You make it rain, right? So you've got to really start to think about how you can get listings, because if you're hearing what they're saying, dual agency, for where it's allowed, is going to be a more common thing. So you might be listing these properties for, let's just say, 3% commission with 0 to the buyer side, and you get all 3% minus what you got to give to your broker. So, keep that in mind. By the way, we have a comment here. Let's see if we can bring it up. If it goes to 0, why will anyone use the MLS? I think buyers will use the MLS. Thank you so much, David, through Zillow and other type of portals. Thank you very much, David, for that question. The buyers are going to use it to get the information. So I think the follow-up question from that, David, is once they get that information, are they going to call up some buyer agent and agree to pay $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 or whatever it is? I don't think so. I think they're just going to go to the list agent, which follows up the question that we had from the other day is, when is the MLS rule that about the display of the list agent going to be more prominent? Yeah. So the only reason why the Boston rental market exists as it does is because landlords don't want to deal directly with the 10 gazillion thousand college students that are, it's just too much of a hassle to do that. So these landlord companies who have already won, as the broker that I work for, remember, the Feinberg Apartment Company, Harold Brown, they've already won. They have the apartments. It's just a matter of who rents them, right? Who rents them. So in a seller's market, the seller has already won. They have the house. But that changes, doesn't it, when supply and demand flips, as if we could go magically back to 2010, which I don't want to go. It's probably my worst ever financial year. If we could magically go back to 2010, buyers were in charge. Buyers were in charge then, weren't they? Because there were listings out the wazoo. But again, getting the listings, I think, is a much stronger long-term position for any agent going forward. Mortgage rates have fallen, and the 10-year has fallen. Look at that! Wow, it's taken the yield has taken a little bit of a beating, which is good news. Don't get me wrong; it is good news. But I still say that this number is going to go up based upon our fiscal policy and our government spending. This is a breather. And of course, we have non-farm payrolls tomorrow. We had the Fed speak yesterday. I don't think this is so much Fed speak that's moving this market, but mortgage rates did go down to, according to Mortgage News Daily, 7.69. Remember, that's a lot that they've moved down, 0.3 basically, since it hit 8 just a couple of weeks ago. This is a significant drop. By the way, thank you so much for our Facebook audience joining us today, and I love your comments. I didn't actually put that down in the stream today. I was a little bit rushed in setting up today's webinar or live stream, whatever this thing is, because for those of you who've complained about the audio quality, I did get a new microphone this morning, and Amazon delivered it to my building this morning at 7:30, and I haven't been able to set it up, but probably for tomorrow's show, you'll be happy to know. All right, so let's go to CNBC, where the anchors there try to figure out what's going on in the marketplace. Here we go.
Circumstances, one would kind of think, wouldn't one, that as interest rates rise, prices would stabilize or even fall to compensate for the higher payment.
Now, that's basic economics. You would think that. But what we've now known is that not only the interest rates have not only moved the demand curve, they've also moved the supply curve. And she's going to answer this question. She nails it.
Historically, how it works.
Which is historically how it works. Why not this time?
Supply. Lack of supply. This is just a crazy, strange housing market. And I hate to get too, clinical on you for it, but in most markets, you see that happen.
Look at these numbers. Chicago +5, New York +5, Detroit 4.8.
But we not only were underbuilding well before the pandemic because of the Great Recession.
Vegas down 5, Phoenix 4, San Francisco 2.5. San Francisco is just imploding.
Builders still weren't up to their normal historical levels of production. Then the pandemic hits and everybody wants to move. Everyone wants to buy, and you're buying with a 3% mortgage rate. So let's all get in on home ownership. And then you have
There was
even
nothing
less
else to
supply.
do.
There was nothing else to do but go
It was
buy a home.
pandemic. I was stuck in my home. I might as well have a better home.
But I would also add, I'm curious for Mark, because he talks about people have to move, but we're seeing a lot of people now who are selling their homes and renting single-family homes. That single-family rental market.
Are we seeing a lot of people sell their homes and then rent? I don't know why you would do that. I don't think I get that at all. By the way, the Case-Shiller index, which we didn't get time to cover because of the whole bombshell lawsuit thing, went up again the other day. So remember, I'm not a huge fan of this, other than the fact that especially if you're trying to market a house right now, what Case-Shiller says is a 3-month average that comes out for August. And yeah, it went up. Okay, let's move on. Who cares? Because it's such a lagging indicator. I don't think it really matters all that much from that point of view. I was going to do another story, but the CNBC thing is not going to work. So we're going to skip over to a sad story that affects me personally, and that my friends at WeWork appear to be going bankrupt. Yep, WeWork, the party is apparently over. I do have my mug. Maybe this might be valuable at some time. I have about, I don't know, maybe four or five of these mugs that I liberated from the WeWork office. I also have some other swag. We got some T-shirts. I think my daughter was just wearing the WeWork Do What You Love T-shirt the other day, which is on the back side of the mug. WeWork is declaring bankruptcy. Now, I still have a WeWork membership. I was just there Tuesday, and I love WeWork. I've loved what it's been done for me. And I can't say enough about the people that work there, but apparently they are preparing for bankruptcy. Back in August, the CEO expressed a substantial doubt exists about the company's ability to continue as a growing concern. Ooh, that didn't sound too good. So I started to wonder whether Tuesday's visit to my WeWork in downtown Boston could have been the last visit to WeWork. Or it could be one of these things where they file for bankruptcy but continue to operate. I know we had a situation like that here in Boston with it's the best pizza in the world, Regina Pizza from the North End, but they were stuck in a bunch of, I know this is a much smaller example, but they were stuck in a bunch of leases at malls. And of course, nobody goes to the mall anymore. So they actually declared bankruptcy to get out of those leases. And so that's what, in a big picture, WeWork might be doing. Like, they might be like, we got to get out of these leases. There's no other way to get out of it other than declare bankruptcy. And then they might reorganize as something new. WeWork 2.0 or something, but I would hate to see them go because but I should probably start to look, sadly, for another alternative. Maybe I should just sign up someplace else and, as an insurance policy, just pay another membership. I've had every level of WeWork membership over the years, and back in the heyday, it was awesome. I remember one year we had a party which the company paid for all with their venture capital. Like, you could call this a malinvestment if you were a member of the Austrian School of Economics. There was several. There were always parties, but one Christmas party was, I think it was 2015 Christmas party. There was a band on every floor. You'd get off the elevator on like the third floor. There was a jazz quartet. It was open bar. I met Newman, who's the founder. He's crazy. But it was just fantastic in its heyday. And it's still now fine. There's plenty of people there. It wasn't like it was a ghost town as it was in late 2020. That really hurt, obviously. And now the flagship where I was at 745 Atlantic, that was their flagship building, 10 stories. They had 8 of the 10 stories. They closed all that down over the pandemic, and they have consolidated some spaces. So that goes to a further topic about the valuations in downtown Boston in all of your cities relative to commercial real estate, as we talked about the other day when I showed you that property, which is actually right around the corner from that WeWork location, that sold for a 53% of what it sold for in 2015. And that is going to have a huge ripple effect on property taxes in your urban core going forward and for a long time. I've been in Boston now a couple of more times in the last couple of weeks, and there are definitely more people on the street, but it is not like when you go to Downtown Crossing in Boston, it is not like it was 4 or 5 years ago. No way. Maybe 70% of that? You tell me. All right. So for today, thank you so much for watching. I loved your comment, that the singular comment that we had. And we will work on the microphone today, right after the show. Until then, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Jack Gately from Jack Gately Real Estate and the Online Real Estate Academy. You have a great day. Go make some money. Bye-bye.